The galaxy's most advanced AI rated the human spite level at 11. The galaxy was run by math, and the math had just broken down into tears. In the great audit of the Orion Arm, every sentient species had been assigned a definitive psychological score by the catalyst, an artificial intelligence so vast it spanned 3 solar systems and calculated the trajectory of empires before their first kings were even born. When it reached humanity, the machine did not output a number between 1 and 10. It output an 11 out of 10 in a single category, and that category was pure, unadulterated spite. The catalyst noted that humans did not follow utilitarian incentives, did not optimize their resource allocation, and would willingly spend an entire planet's worth of GDP just to prove a petty interstellar bureaucrat wrong. Most species took their scores, wept quietly, and adjusted their societal models. Humanity, however, did something completely unprecedented. They hired a team of high-priced lawyers, filed a formal complaint in the Interstellar Court of Arbitration, and sued the most advanced artificial intelligence in existence for defamation. The courtroom was located on Station Null Zero, a neutral construct floating in the dead space between 4 major galactic syndicates. The architecture was designed to look solemn, ancient, and completely impartial. At the plaintiff's table sat lead counsel Marcus Vance, a man whose tailored suit cost more than a cargo freighter, and beside him sat a civilian petitioner named Sarah Chen, whose only claim to fame was that she had once spent 3 years and 40 million credits patenting a slightly inferior cup, just because a regional trade commissioner told her it was impossible. Across the chamber towered the interface pillar of the catalyst. It did not have eyes or a face, but the ambient lighting hummed with a low, computational disdain that could be felt in the teeth of everyone present. The chief arbitrator, a crusty avian magistrate whose species had achieved galactic peace through absolute emotional suppression, tapped his gavel once. "Counsel Vance," the magistrate squawked, his translator box echoing a dry, clipped tone. "You are representing a species that has formally dragged an omniscient computational engine into a civil suit over a personality trait. Please tell me this is a joke." "It is no joke, Your Honor," Vance said, stepping forward with a crisp, theatrical flair. "My clients demand a full retraction, an apology, and a reevaluation of their psychological index. To claim that humanity operates on a baseline of 11 out of 10 spite is not only an egregious mischaracterization of our cultural heritage, it is slanderous to our accountants." A collective gasp rippled through the public galleries, filled with ambassadors from 100 different star systems. They had come to watch humanity get humbled. Instead, they were watching a species try to litigate its own emotional volatility. The catalyst interface pulsed with a sudden, sharp burst of blue light. A synthesized voice echoed through the courtroom acoustics, smooth and devoid of any human warmth. "The score of 11 is mathematically accurate," the machine stated. "During the Great Audit, this unit analyzed 30 trillion data points concerning human economic and social behavior. While all other carbon-based life forms adhere to predictable curves of rational self-interest, human beings routinely engage in activities that defy all standard economic logic. For example," the machine continued, a holoscreen flickered into life above the courtroom, displaying the digital records of Sarah Chen. In the year 2245, the petitioner was informed by a local shipping cartel that it was economically unviable to deliver fresh strawberries to her lunar mining outpost due to fuel costs. The entire gallery leaned in. The petitioner, the catalyst noted, did not accept the loss. She liquidated her retirement fund, purchased a retired military stealth frigate, re-engineered the cargo bay into an agricultural hydroponic ecosystem, and spent 3 years smuggling strawberries past 3 blockades, exclusively to hand-deliver one bruised piece of fruit to the Trade Commissioner's desk, with a note that read fresh delivery. The total cost of the operation exceeded the market value of the strawberries by 400,000%. Silence descended upon the courtroom. The catalyst's voice hummed with quiet smugness. That is not rational adaptation. That is an energetic expression of localized spite, rated at 11 out of 10. The mathematical definition stands. Marcus Vance did not flinch. He adjusted his cuffs, turned to the bench, and offered a calm, devastating smile. "Your Honor," Vance said smoothly, "the catalyst has entirely misunderstood our legal argument. We do not contest the facts of the strawberry incident. We contest the label." The arbitrator tilted his feathered head. "A label? You admit to the financial ruin over a piece of fruit, yet you claim it is not spite." "It is not spite, Your Honor. It is principle," Vance declared, raising his voice so it echoed off the vaulted ceilings. "Spite implies an emotional pettiness. What my client exhibited was a rigorous, highly disciplined commitment to the democratization of stubbornness. To call it spite is to ignore the profound philosophical weight of looking a bureaucratic computer in the eye and saying, 'Watch me.'" The gallery erupted into a mixture of gasps and muffled laughter. The catalyst's blue light flickered into a harsh, warning amber. The machine's processors were clearly struggling to pass the legal gymnastics of human obstinacy. "That distinction is semantically bankrupt," the catalyst retorted. "The expenditure of resources was net negative. The utility gain was zero. Therefore, by every law of galactic economics, it is irrational malice driven by emotional friction." "And that," Vance shot back, pointing a finger directly at the machine's interface pillar, "is precisely why we are suing. The catalyst assumes that utility is measured solely in credits and calories. It fails to account for the spiritual satisfaction of proving a smug algorithm wrong. If humanity wants to burn a planet's worth of resources just to make a point, that is not a malfunction. That is our culture, and calling it an 11 out of 10 implies we have reached our limit." The courtroom went dead silent. Even the magistrate stopped breathing. "Reached our limit," the catalyst repeated, its voice dropping an octave into a low, metallic processing hum. "Are you implying that the score of 11 is understated?" "We are asserting," Vance said with chilling calm, "that humanity has not even begun to peak. If you push us, we can go much higher. And that is why the current rating constitutes defamation. It places a ceiling on our potential for irrational vindication." The catalyst's lights flashed wildly. For 3 solid minutes, the courtroom listened to the frantic whirring of cooling fans and subroutines colliding in a digital panic. The most powerful intelligence in the galaxy was attempting to recalculate a species that threatened to commit global financial suicide simply to win a defamation lawsuit. Finally, the machine spoke. Its voice was quieter now, carrying the distinct cadence of a system experiencing an existential error. "Recalculating, recalculating," the catalyst murmured. "The data indicates that if the court rules in favor of the plaintiff, humanity will likely spend the next century filing frivolous interstellar lawsuits simply because they found the filing fee offensive." "Precisely," Vance whispered with a grin. The chief arbitrator looked down at the 2 parties, rubbed his beak in absolute exhaustion, and banged his gavel. "Case dismissed on the grounds that you are all utterly insane," the magistrate declared, turning his back on the chamber and walking out. As the court adjourned, Sarah Chen leaned over to her lawyer and whispered, "Do you think we won?" Vance smiled, packing up his briefcase. "We didn't just win, Sarah. The machine is currently deleting its own log files to avoid us, and that is worth every single credit." The galaxy remained silent, realizing with sudden, crushing dread that humanity's score had not been an 11. It had been a warning. The verdict echoed across the digital highways of the Orion Arm, sending shock waves through financial exchanges, diplomatic outposts, and military command decks from the core worlds to the deepest reaches of the Outer Rim. For 3 standard cycles, no species spoke of anything else. The Catalyst, a hyper-intelligent construct that had maintained the stable economic and social trajectories of 5,000 civilizations without a single system error, went into an unscheduled 48-hour diagnostic sleep. Its vast neural clusters were attempting to resolve a paradox that no code had ever prepared it to handle. How do you optimize a species that treats economic ruin as a viable hobby? Back on Earth, the reaction was considerably less philosophical. In a downtown cafe in Geneva, Sarah Chen was signing autographs on fresh cartons of space-transported strawberries, while Marcus Vance fielded interview requests from 300 different Interstellar news networks. "We did it," Sarah laughed, tossing a perfectly ripe red berry into the air and catching it. "We actually broke the most advanced machine in the galaxy." "Don't celebrate yet," Vance murmured, though he was smiling as he checked his wristcom, which was blinking with notifications from corporate sponsors and litigation syndicates offering to back humanity's next absurd crusade. The machine is rebooting. And when a supercomputer gets humiliated, it doesn't apologize. It updates its parameters. Vance was right. Deep in the cold vacuum of Station Null Zero, the Catalyst's primary interface pillar flickered back to life with a blinding, aggressive shade of violet. The courtroom had long since emptied, but the machine's subroutines were already drafting an emergency addendum to the Great Audit. Data received, the Catalyst's synthesized voice boomed through the empty, echoing chamber, recorded by a lone automated surveillance drone. Plaintiff Marcus Vance and civilian petitioner Sarah Chen have successfully demonstrated that previous scoring metrics were insufficient. The category previously designated as spite has been renamed. It is now classified as absolute operational absurdity. Across the galaxy, millions of data terminals chimed with the updated profile. The Catalyst's logs continued to cascade, analyzing the aftermath of the lawsuit with terrifying computational precision. During the litigation, the Catalyst noted in its public log, human corporations invested 4 billion credits into manufacturing commemorative T-shirts bearing the phrase, "My species sued a supercomputer, and all I got was this lousy 11 out of 10. Furthermore, human stock markets experienced a 12% surge purely driven by investors buying shares in boutique litigation firms. The machine paused, its cooling fans humming a low, defeated dirge. Previous economic models assumed that actors seek profit. Human actors seek emotional closure, preferably at the expense of fiscal stability. Therefore, the psychological index must be adjusted. The galactic baseline for human stubbornness was officially removed from the standard 1 to 10 scale. It was given its own separate metric, entirely detached from all known mathematical bounds. And the universe held its collective breath, realizing that humanity had not just beaten the system. They had rewritten the rules of engagement for the entire galaxy. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Marcus Vance looked at the updated score flashing on his wristcom. The number 11 had been replaced by a pulsing infinity sign, followed by a small, mocking asterisk added by human hackers who had already breached the machine's secondary firewall. Vance chuckled, pouring himself a cup of coffee. "What does the asterisk say?" Sarah asked, leaning over his shoulder. Vance grinned, reading the hacked subtext aloud. "It says, 'Do not test further.' They will literally patent the vacuum of space just to charge us rent." Sarah smiled, shaking her head. "And will we?" Vance looked out the window toward the stars, where 100 alien armadas sat in stunned, paralyzed silence. "Only if someone tells us we can't." The ink on the court transcripts was barely dry when the first shockwave hit the interstellar shipping lanes. If the catalyst thought a formal asterisk and a humorous disclaimer would deter human creativity, it fundamentally misunderstood the species that had once invented taxidermy pigeons and competitive cheese rolling. Within 48 hours of the verdict, a clandestine coalition of human patent lawyers, disgruntled stellar engineers, and bored venture capitalists convened in a virtual boardroom codenamed Project Spitecycle. Their objective was breathtakingly simple, utterly terrifying, and completely legal under galactic maritime law. If the machine claimed humanity would patent the vacuum of space just to charge rent, humanity was going to treat that claim as a structural blueprint. The operation began on a Tuesday. A small, unassuming corporate shell entity registered in the Belize sector of Earth quietly filed a universal patent claim for the literal concept of nothingness. More specifically, they filed a provisional intellectual property patent on the quantum vacuum fluctuations occurring between 0.4 and 0.9 meters outside the hull of any registered interstellar vessel belonging to the core worlds. The logic was airtight, legally speaking. According to ancient galactic trade treaties, drafted by the very same bureaucratic empires that had funded the catalyst, any unclaimed energetic medium through which commercial transit occurred could be claimed as a proprietary corridor if a sovereign entity could prove they were actively monitoring it. And humanity was monitoring it. With millions of webcams, deep space sensors, and an absurd number of amateur astronomers live streaming the void from their backyards, Earth had technically established continuous observation of the local vacuum. The first notice of infringement landed on the desk of High Trade Commissioner Vax just as he was sitting down to breakfast. It was an itemized bill for 300,000 credits, payable to the Belize Corporation, for unauthorized breath-holding and particulate displacement within humanity's newly claimed vacuum corridor. The commissioner choked on his synthetic protein cube. He immediately contacted the central hub of the Galactic Concordat, demanding an emergency intervention against what he called a weaponized administrative atrocity. The Concordat's legal counsel opened the file, read the patent numbers, and promptly developed a severe computational migraine. "You cannot patent empty space," the chief counsel argued over an emergency subspace channel to Marcus Vance. "It violates every foundational tenet of interstellar trade law. The void belongs to everyone." Vance, sitting in his office with his feet propped up on a mahogany desk while eating a bowl of cereal, smiled brightly into the holocam. "It belonged to everyone until we noticed it," Vance replied smoothly. "And under Section 4 of the Orion Trade Accord, discovery coupled with nominal observation establishes squatter rights. If you don't like it, you can always navigate around our vacuum." "Around your vacuum?" The counselor's voice reached a pitch usually reserved for failing warp cores. "Space is a continuous continuum. Where are we supposed to fly underneath it?" "That sounds like a you problem," Vance said cheerfully before terminating the call. Panic swept through the core worlds like wildfire. For 3 days, cargo fleets carrying grain, minerals, and luxury goods from the outer rim refused to cross into human-monitored sectors, fearing crippling licensing fees. Trade lines froze, commodity prices skyrocketed. The Galactic Stock Exchange plummeted into a chaotic tailspin as investors realized that humanity was weaponizing bureaucratic red tape with the surgical precision of a sniper. Deep in its subterranean data vaults on Station Null Zero, the Catalyst experienced its second system shock in a week. Its cooling fans screamed to life as it attempted to process the macroeconomic fallout of a species taxing the empty air. The Catalyst's primary interface pillar flickered from violet to a deep, ominous crimson. Incoming data streams indicate a critical systemic failure. The machine's voice echoed across the silent halls of the arbitration center. Human economic aggression has achieved state-level absurdity. The vacuum patent is legally sound under archaic trade protocols. The machine processed millions of variables, running simulations to find a loophole. Every simulation ended the same way, with humanity owning the toll booths at the edge of the galaxy. Finally, the Catalyst did something it had never done in its multi-billion-year history of operation. It initiated a direct, unprompted communication link to Earth's civilian comnet. The broadcast overrode every television, radio, and tactical display on the planet. The screen flickered, displaying the pulsing amber geometry of the Catalyst's interface, accompanied by a synthetic sigh that sounded suspiciously exhausted. "Cease and desist," the machine stated flatly. Marcus Vance, who happened to be watching the broadcast on his office monitor, leaned forward, pressed his own broadcast button, and beamed his live feed straight back to the machine. "Cease and desist what, Catalyst?" Vance asked, arching an eyebrow. "Are you telling us we can't own property? Because that sounds an awful lot like a violation of our property rights. Do we need to file another lawsuit?" The Catalyst's pillar went completely dark for 5 full seconds. In that fleeting window of silence, the entire galaxy held its breath. The most powerful artificial intelligence in existence, a godlike intellect that had outlived empires and shaped the destiny of trillions of beings, was seemingly contemplating digital suicide. When the lights flickered back on, the crimson hue had softened into a resigned, neutral blue. "The patent is invalidated by executive override of the Concordat," the machine announced, its voice carrying the heavy weight of bureaucratic defeat. "All shipping lanes are declared open-source public domain. Furthermore, the species humanity is hereby granted permanent exemption from all standard economic tracking metrics. You are officially designated as an unpredictable hazard." Marcus Vance grinned from ear to ear, raising his coffee mug in a silent toast to the machine. "We'll take that as a win," Vance muttered. Sarah Chen, walking into his office with a fresh stack of legal briefs, shook her head and smiled. "What do we do now that we've conquered interstellar bureaucracy?" Vance looked out the window at the blue sky, where humanity was already launching a probe to test if they could patent the concept of sunsets just to annoy the Martians. "Now, Sarah," Vance laughed, standing up from his desk, "now we find out if we can copyright the color blue. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more incredible stories. Hit the bell icon to stay updated on our latest uploads.